Welcome to the Mindful Academy podcast with me, Jennifer Askey. I'm a professional certified coach and academic workplace consultant. On this podcast, I talk about doing well personally so that you can perform well professionally. I talk about intentional career planning and about how to get out of your own way and align yourself with success. Thank you for joining me. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Mindful Academy. I'm Jennifer Askey, your coach. And today I'm going to talk about being a completionist. So, anonymized tales from coaching today. One of my clients and I came up with the phrase being a completionist. And I don't know if it's a real word, but I like it, because it gets at the notion of if it's not complete, oh my gosh, 110% is the bare minimum. So I'm going to tell you three stories, anonymized and somewhat amalgamated stories of clients who run up against the very human struggle of good enough or minimum viable product. Right? Because not everything you do needs to be 110%. So we'll start with client A. We'll call her Susie. So Susie gets lost in secondary research and loses the thread of her own argument in the pursuit of rigor. And this is sneaky because let's say you get a revise and resubmit, or a rejection, or a snarky comment about, oh, you didn't consider so-and-so. Or you're putting together something like a book proposal, which seems very high stakes, and you need to do a comprehensive literature review of the field. And so you read, you do research, you come up with a bibliography. You check out all of the books, all of the articles, you ILL everything. You have a stack of printouts or a folder on your desktop full of things to read. And then as you read those things, you realize, oh man, they cite this, and oh, these people cite that. And then you go hunting through their endnotes, footnotes, and bibliographies to find even more things that somebody somewhere along the line may ask you if you know. So let's work on the assumption that like 10% of that is true, like this much, just the tip of my finger of that is true. Yes, you need to know the lay of the land in your field so that you have a foundation upon which to base great arguments. But one of the challenges that comes up for people who are writing and who feel these particular tendencies is the challenge of articulating, like, what is my own voice here? What is my argument? What is my stake? What is my claim? What contribution am I making? And what is my relationship to all of these other bits of literature? Am I building on it? Am I pushing back against it? Am I rewriting it? Am I twisting it upside down? Am I inspired by it? Am I agreeing with 5 other people that it's totally passé, but then I have to acknowledge that these 7 people think it's the bee's knees, right? Without having thoroughly grounded yourself in your own argument, it might be easy to get completely swamped by other people's arguments. So that's one problem there. The other problem there is, what does due diligence mean? And I'll contend that due diligence doesn't mean you have read every single word that every single person closely related to your subspecialty has ever written. That's not actually humanly possible. You cannot actually do that. Unless you have the world's tiniest subspecialty and it's brand new and only 5 people have been writing about it for 2 years. Even then, be a lot of stuff to read, and you're unlikely to get through it all. So what does it mean to be a judicious sampler of secondary literature? What does a good, well-grounded literature review look like? how are you going to define the parameters of this is the literature I believe is pertinent? And if I'm wrong, if I've missed something key, according to what I have outlined here, let me know, right? This is also something that I think happens when we make the transition from writing a dissertation to writing a monograph or writing an article, where your purpose is not to prove yourself. Your purpose is not to jump through every hoop and dot all the I's and cross all the T's. Your purpose is to mount a really compelling argument, story, rationale. And you have more autonomy, more authority once you are Dr. So-and-so, once you're on your second big project, to put boundaries around it and say, this is what I'm examining. Unless I have really good reason for you to tell me, unless you have really good reason to tell me, no, you need to broaden those borders. You can't narrow it like that without taking X into consideration, right? So there's a scholarly back and forth to happen there in the review process, but you do not have to be the completionist who reads every single thing anybody even remotely related to your field of study has ever written, because you will get lost in that. Your voice will get lost in that. And it will take up time that needs to be spent doing more productive things, I will argue. Okay, so rigor is not completionism. That's my first story. The second story has to do with grading, marking, assessing student work. So another client, we'll call him Jack, loves teaching, gets a lot of fulfillment out of being in the classroom, being there for his students, putting together super engaging, super student-centered lesson plans. He gets 5-star reviews from his students. Everybody loves him, and it's really where he shines. And he's at a teaching institution, so recognizing good teaching is good for him. It's a big part of his job. It's good for his career to be a good teacher. But being a good teacher in 50-minute chunks 3 or 5 times a week isn't the only thing that feeds into Jack's professional success. He gets evaluated on other things as well. And also, he has goals. He has some research goals, he has some funding goals, he has some personal goals, and he needs to have time to spend on those goals as well. And what he's discovering is that between meticulous preparation for a 50-minute class, sticking around class to answer all comers' questions and queries, and providing detailed written feedback on every student assignment, he doesn't really have much time left over to pursue any of his other priorities. Jack is newer in the profession and came from a program where pedagogy was emphasized and where they were taught to prepare in a certain way and evaluate their own lessons in a certain way. And so pedagogy, qua pedagogy, was a really big focus. And Jack is running up against the realization that a professor has multiple priorities, not just teaching. And if he continues to follow sort of the grad school TA model that he learned of how to prepare, how to conduct class, how to be student-centered, how to provide really quality feedback, he'll never get anything else done. It's really common in various ways. Even people who claim to not love teaching see and experience how teaching a full course load, whether that's 2, 3, or 4 courses per semester for you, regardless of how much it is, it will expand to fill the available time you give it. And different people, different students want different things from your class. And if you try to provide that to each and every student, you end up teaching multiple different things in order to satisfy different students and their expectations. So let's think about preparation and grading. And whether you think of preparation as like putting together the syllabus or planning each lesson, I'll offer the perspective of where does this class that you're teaching fit into the overall curriculum of the degree program? If it's an elective, where does it fit into the overall experience of the student? How many other classes are your students taking? Why do they think they've enrolled in this class? What would thrill you if they took away from it? Like, what's the gem that you want them to leave with? Because when it comes to syllabus design, more is not more. Sometimes less is very much more, right? So think about what's essential and what's gravy. What serves the student's purpose and what serves the degree's purpose might be different than what serves the discipline's purpose, right? Are you approaching crafting undergraduate classes as if you are preparing a PhD thesis, when in reality, those are addressed at two different audiences? Right, so I run into that, especially with people who care a great deal and want to make sure that they leave no stone left unturned with their students. And what that ends up offering students is maybe too much information to take on at their introductory level or even intermediate level, too much to wade through. On the other side, with grading assignments, taking in things, again, what is the purpose of the assignment? What role does it fulfill in the class? What role is the feedback supposed to achieve? If you're in a course that does anything writing intensive, are you offering feedback on drafts that you expect to be incorporated so that they write the next version better? That makes sense. If you're providing feedback on written work that doesn't get rewritten, that these students never revisit, that they don't have to rewrite, you are probably wasting your time. So let's say you think, oh gosh, but there are a couple students who love that. Great. Let them know, right? Have a rubric. This is why you got the grade you got. I graded it on these criteria. If you want more detailed feedback on X, come to my office hours or make an appointment with me. Then you're doing it in real time, conversationally with the student in 20 minutes, and then it's done. As opposed to spending those 20 minutes per paper with every student in the class, and only 2 of them are going to take that feedback in. And if you have assignments where corrections and feedback and all of that are dead ends, put a number on it and move on, right? Like, we only should be providing feedback on things that the students are going to do something with, that they have to do something with, and that they're motivated to do something with. Now, this, I sort of feel like I'm being preachy, but I run into this more often than I would have expected. That people are like, well, good feedback looks like this, and I provide good feedback. So Jack is just going to keep giving good feedback, even though nobody ever looks at it, and he begins to resent it. So you want to right size your planning and your assessment to the course, to the students who are in the course, and to the purpose of both the course and the assignments in it. Make it the right size and resent less. Don't be a completionist. Okay. My third person, let's call her Karen. Has a problem with saying yes to everything. Karen is awesome because she is an idea generating machine. And she is like the best brainstorming partner in her department. And so graduate students and other faculty are forever knocking on her door, coming in and saying, "Ooh, I have this cool idea." And Karen will chat with them about it. She will get all excited about it. And then at some point, the student or the colleague will say, "Great, let's put something together. Let's do a workshop. Let's do a conference. Let's submit to a call for papers. Let's submit a grant. Let's create a class. Let's write a paper." And Karen is like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. And before long, this is Karen's project when it wasn't her idea in the first place. And when she didn't really sign up to project manage it, but she's pretty good at project managing. She's really good at getting things done. And people are learning that if they come to her with great ideas, she will help them realize them. The result for Karen, though, is she spends a fair amount of time irritated with herself and other people. She's irritated with others because their passion projects are things that she is like, come on, let's get this over the line. You said you'd have it done by Tuesday. So she's pushing people to get their projects realized so that she can do her part. And she's looking at her parking lot of ideas for her own research, and they're kind of languishing because she is making other people's ideas into collaborative projects that take over all of her time. So this kind of completionism is no good idea left behind. Every good idea that I have or that gets presented to me needs action. That way madness lies, my friends. You cannot do everything all the time. Duh, right? That sounds super obvious. But I think people like Karen find themselves in this position because, oh, so-and-so came to me to talk about a paper. If I say no, this opportunity will never return. They won't like me. They won't write a letter of recommendation for me. I'll never get into Journal X if I don't partner with Professor Y, right? So we get this academic FOMO around, oh, well, an opportunity has been presented to me. It's an easy win because it's not all on me. It'll be a line on my CV. Collaboration and interdisciplinary work rock, and I get rewarded for those. I'm going to do it, right? So my question there in the no good idea left behind version of completionism is, how important is it to you to realize your own ideas? How important is it to your success in your job that you lead with your own ideas? Right? If you are perfectly happy being the midwife to other people's brilliance, and you can build a solid career on that and get recognized for that because it shows up on your CV somehow, and that brings you immense fulfillment, that's amazing. Go be Karen. But even Karen is going to get too many offers to actually complete, right? My guess, though, is that you don't want to be the midwife to everybody else's genius, that you got into the field because you had a couple things you wanted to say. So how do you learn to pick the right collaborations and not say yes to every good idea that comes along? What criteria do you use to make those decisions? How many things can you take on in a year? How do you choose to feel about the one that got away, right? The idea that you don't help bring into reality. How do you choose to feel about FOMO? How do you choose to feel about jealousy? Like, oh, so-and-so's doing it and not me because I said no because I'm doing this thing over here, right? So that emotional self-management comes into play if you're really worried about saying no to juicy opportunities, such that you say yes to every opportunity, even if it isn't really juicy, but sort of like stale and crusty on the edges, but you're going to make it something great. This kind of completionism looks like you're a world beater, but it ends up burying you. And whether you are Susie or Jack or Karen, you are operating out of fear, right? Susie is afraid that the invisible dissertation director in the sky is going to read through her bibliography and say, you missed something, you suck. Jack is afraid that students won't like him, that students won't learn the absolute best way they could possibly learn the absolute best things they could possibly learn. That not every day in the classroom will be as good as he knows he could make it. And that will be a personal failing. And Karen is afraid of missing out on opportunities where she sees real possibility because she is an idea generating machine. And she fears if she says no, no good opportunity will ever come her way again. People will think she's a crappy collaborator because she said no once. Nobody will ever work with her again, and she will die old and alone with her cats. Right? These are all fear-based, granted hyperbolic there in my telling, all fear-based responses that are sort of protecting us by helping us be like our best selves. Oh, your best self is thorough and rigorous in research. Your best self is an excellent teacher. Your best self is an excellent collaborator. I will suggest, so here's the Mindful Academy talking. Your best self can be incredibly rigorous and pedagogically sound and super creative and collaborative, but your best self has boundaries. Your best self knows what success looks like for you. And your best self has enough self-compassion and self-awareness to say, aha, this is what my success looks like. These are what my values are. Ergo, this is how I'm going to spend my time. So if you listened to the episode a couple weeks ago on women in academic leadership, and sort of the phenomenon of the reluctant leader being stalled out at associate and doing a ton of service work. I talked a lot about values and prioritization there, and here it comes up again, right? What is really important to you? How do you define your success? What is going to make you feel successful? And how do those things help you make decisions about where you spend your time? So for example, with Jack, we talked about, oh my goodness, I'm so busy. Okay, how are you spending your time, Jack? Oh, all this grading. Tell me about it. Midterms. Oh, okay. What does that look like? All these short answers, all these essays. Why did I assign some? I'm like, okay, what are the students going to do with all of the grading that you're doing? Do they get them back? Is that policy in your department? Do they get to rewrite things? Do they get to correct? Like, what are they doing with your written comments on their midterms? And there was silence there. And so I had him talk about like what purpose the midterm served, what he wanted them to get out of the feedback, the fact that he wanted them to know what he was looking for in the answers. And we talked about alternative ways to convey that information without him doing it over and over and over again on each and individual written copy of the midterm, right? So thinking about what is important, okay, students need to know what they got right and wrong and why, and how you're going to spend your time pursuing what's important. Typed or handwritten feedback on each and every single exam, or a guide to understanding your grade, where you type it up once and say, these are the types of things I saw right and wrong. Here's your score. If you have questions, come and talk to me, because most students won't. And then the students who really want that, who you think you're teaching, right? And that's who you're teaching to, that's who you're marking to, they'll come to you and you can have that really valuable exchange, right? So this mindful way of protecting your time for your own priorities and values, and still being that version of your best self where it matters. So my invitation to each of you, if you are struggling with being a completionist, I want you to ground yourself in your values, establish your priorities, and as you do this, like, cultivate an amazing amount of self-compassion. Wow, this might be hard for me, right? Oh, wow, I'm finding this really difficult. Oh, I'm beating myself up, right? Respond with self-compassion to all of that. And if that is a challenge for you, you know where to find me, and we can talk about it, because these are very human challenges that a lot of people run into. I run into them in my own business. I also have a coach and a partner who pull me back from the brink of taking on too much or erasing all of the boundaries between my work and my private life. So figure out who can help you with that prioritization and your adherence to your values. And again, I thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with me in your ears. I will be back in a couple weeks with another episode of the Mindful Academy. In the meantime, if you have feedback, if there's something you want me to talk about, if you're interested in, do other people experience this? I'd like to hear more. Reach out, Jennifer at jenniferaskey.com. I'd be more than happy to hear from you. Take care. Talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Mindful Academy podcast. For questions about this episode, suggestions for future episodes, or to request a consultation with me, email me at jennifer@jenniferaskey.com. This episode was recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 lands. The songs included in the intro and outro for this podcast are Heartache by Silent Partner and Piano Store by Jimmy Fontanez of Media Right Productions, both sourced through the audio library. Thank you so much for listening.